Good afternoon, evening, and morning, everyone. My name is Neil Mansilla. I am a developer advocate at Atlassian, which means I advocate on behalf of every developer, whether you're a partner, customer, or a future developer. Today, we're going to learn about Rovo, Atlassian's latest AI innovation. I'm going to give a background on Rovo as well as a background on Forge, Atlassian's cloud app development platform, which is how we're going to be building some custom Rovo agents later on in the presentation. So high-level agenda here is we're going to do the overview of Rovo. You'll see it in action as a product. I'm going to give an overview of Forge. If any of you are not familiar with Forge, then I'm going to do some live demos. I'm going to build a Rovo agent from scratch using Forge from 0 lines of code and show you how easy that is to get started. And then I'm going to pull a more advanced use case example of building a custom Rovo agent using Forge that will pull data from an external API and incorporate it into the product. And then we'll wrap up with some Q&A. What is Rovo? Rovo is an AI-powered product that elevates teamwork through powerful AI-human collaboration, transforming how teams discover and use organizational knowledge. Rovo is based on 3 value pillars: find, learn, and act. Rovo unlocks a world-class enterprise search engine. It helps you find the knowledge you need to do your work. Rovo Search makes finding information easier and faster across Atlassian cloud products, connected SaaS apps, and proprietary data sources. Instead of searching within Confluence only, imagine being able to search across Jira, Confluence, Bitbucket, but also along other platforms you use, like Google Drive, Slack, Microsoft, SharePoint, Teams, GitHub, etc., all unified under Rovo Search. For the second pillar, Rovo provides a rich set of AI tools that help you learn and gain insights from even the most complex information and data sets. Rovo Chat, like the chat interface, is a part of this learn pillar, and it serves as an expert in everything about your company. It knows the people, the projects, and the way that things work. And as part of the ACT pillar, the third pillar, Rovo Agents, and these are the AI teammates that help you move work forward. Agents take knowledge and help you turn that into action. They're experts at streamlining complex processes, solving challenging problems, and managing repetitive tasks. So out of the 3 pillars of Rovo, we're going to be focused on the last one, the ACT pillar. We're going to focus on agents, both out-of-the-box agents, things that just kind of come with Rovo, and then building custom agents as well. So what are Rovo agents? You can think of them as customizations of Rovo's AI capabilities that are designed to perform specific types of tasks. The goal is to help users move work forward by utilizing Rovo's natural language capabilities. Rovo agents are useful for many kinds of text-heavy processing where there's some kind of pattern to the work that needs to be performed. There are 2 broad benefits of Rovo agents, but many agents that you use will exhibit characteristics across both types. First are time-saving agents, and that involves usually distilling or organizing data. And then there's agents that are focused on quality improvement, and they typically involve manipulating information into new forms. There are a number of locations within Jira and Confluence, for example, where you'll be using Rovo agents. There's a little sidebar chat where you can have an interactive conversation with an agent. You can also interact with an agent when editing a Jira description or a Confluence page. You can use Rovo to help craft and refine your content. Agents can also be used when building out automation rules inside the automations part of our products. So perhaps the best way to think of Rovo agents as virtual teammates. When using Rovo, you get over 20 agents that are available to you out of the box that can help you do all sorts of things. And there's also agents that you can find that were built by partners in the ecosystem, and you can find those on the Atlassian Marketplace, which is essentially an app store. These agents help you with common use cases across a variety of organizational needs and industries. They're also great to provide you with some inspiration of what's possible when it comes to building your own Rovo agent, if you wanted to do so. That inspiration is there because Rovo gives you the capability of creating your own when you think you need one. There are an infinite number of possibilities, allowing you to make agents to solve your own unique and specific use cases. There are 2 ways to build your own custom agents with no code, where you simply build it using natural language within the product, or with code using Forge. We're going to cover both of those scenarios. Building with no code, a custom agent, you do it with just guided prompting assistance. Any user of the product can build an agent. They don't have to be an admin or a developer. You can also share those custom agents across your organization with your teammates or other folks in the company. I'm going to hop into the browser to show the Rovo product. We'll do searches, look at some of the agents that are out of the box. We'll have a chat, and then we're going to build an agent using the UI. For those that were not familiar with Rovo, this is a quick look at what Rovo looks like. Let's hop into the chat interface. When I click on this chat, it'll open up a little side panel here. See if I can zoom a little bit more. And you can have just a regular conversation. Hello, Rovo. What can you do for me today? I need to write a blog article. If you've used LLMs in chat, you can ask general questions with natural language, and it'll come back with a bunch of answers. Look where it's pulling from is not just the general LLM training that it had from all of the universe of knowledge on the internet, but also it's contextual. It actually got some information from within my instance. Back to the agents that come out of the box. Let's say, for instance, I wanted to browse. These are the ones that were built by Atlassian and come by default. And let's say, for instance, I wanted to find something that can help me write some comms. So generate content that matches your brand voice and tone. So let's click on that. This agent is very geared towards a specific job. And it explains its job, describe our organization's voice and tone, review this. So whoever created this agent kind of had these conversation starters. So let's click on this first one, describe our organization's voice and tone. Again, the context is important here, because I think that when you ask a question to an LLM, you're going to get great answers. It's going to try to predict what you're trying to do, but that's also trained on global knowledge that it was trained on over the internet. With Rovo, you're also getting things that are very specific, like contextually aware of what's within your Confluence instance. Why that's super powerful is that if your organization has a lot of knowledge, data, and history within Confluence, you're going to find that the responses that come back are a heck of a lot more useful than just general knowledge that's out there in the world that it was trained on. So that was an example of a comms crafter, something that can help you craft comms. There's just a plethora of them that you can use and select from. So these are very specific agents that were built with very specific task goals that you're trying to accomplish. Now, this idea of like, well, what if I wanted to create my own agent? It's as simple as any user can do this. You just click on create. This is the example of creating an agent with no code. And it's very verbose step-by-step. Describe what you want your agent to do. I want my agent very knowledgeable about all things Germany. Team members might want to craft content specific to Germany. This agent should give great cultural references and recommendations. And so this is a very interactive natural language way to create an agent. So conversation starters, here you saw those little prompts that were presented when I selected one of those other agents. You can also choose a name for your agent. How about the German culture guru? Sure. German culture guru sounds great. Now we have the name. Let's move on to refining the agent's profile. What specific goals and knowledge do you want the agent to be aware of? Goals, creating very well crafted content that is informative about all things Germany, almost like a tour guide and local expert. Now, it says, I've updated the agent's profile with the goals you mentioned. Are there any specific tasks or requirements you have in mind, region? None right now. Let's just go with that. Okay, we'll keep it simple. Think about the tone. Should it be formal? The tone should be humorous and friendly. I'm sure you've heard of the term prompt engineering. When LLM started getting popular, I thought that was kind of a goofy term, but it's a real thing. And I think this is a guided way to get better at prompting, because it is actually prompting you to help craft a better prompt for the future users of our German culture guru. I've updated this. Do you have any specific guidelines in mind? No guidelines. Just be polite. It's created. So you can proceed to the next steps. We'll hit next here in the top right. And here are some conversation starters. You can specify the agent's knowledge by only allowing it to reference sources you provide. So you can be very specific. I only want it to be within Confluence, and you can select certain spaces, but I'm going to say I want it to be able to search everything. So I'm just going to hit create. So that's useful to scope the access for this agent so that it only essentially trains or searches within a specific space or a project. I think we are good to hit update, and let's have a conversation with our agent. Okay, here we go. This is a blown up version of our chat to agent. I want to write a blog article on my visit to Cologne. I had an opportunity to speak at the ACE community group. Can you help me with that? Here it says reviewing the question, searching the page, and generating a final response. Look at this. This thing actually drafted an introduction. Cologne, a city vibrant as its carnival and historic as its cathedral. If you're familiar with using ChatGPT, Gemini, Meta's AI, very similar interface, having a conversation. And what's different is we crafted our agent to be very specific, to like being very, all things awesome about Cologne and Germany, etc. And also, if I were to want to pull information, ask it questions about the page that I'm on, it would be context aware. So that's how we create an agent within the product. Search is really powerful. You can ask how many issues, what is most important to work on next. This is not just basic keyword search. This is kind of the intelligence part of it, based on recent updates and tasks. So it's actually finding information within not just Confluence, but now it's even searching Jira as well. So that's the idea of being able to go across multiple products. If I had my Loom connected or Figma connected, it could also query against that as well. Very different from traditional conversation you might have had with the general chatbot out there. We're very context aware of what's on your instance. At Atlassian, decades of data at this point that Rovo was aware of, being able to find and search, get detailed information about work that was performed or projects that have gone in the past. It has saved individuals so much time because it's not just a general search engine. It goes a lot deeper than that. Okay, so that was a really quick overview of Rovo. I know I'm not a product marketing manager or a product manager, so maybe not the best demo. The best demo of Rovo would be if I were to hop into Atlassian's main instance and show you how I use it. But obviously I can't. Rest assured that I think that if you start using Rovo, you can get your own. If you don't have Rovo on your company instance, when you get a developer instance, which I'm going to talk about in a bit, you can have your own personal Jira Confluence instance with Rovo, and you can mess around with it yourself. So that was creating an agent with no code, but why create a custom agent with Forge, with code? For more complex, tailored use cases, there's an agent building platform with Forge. And so a few specific reasons why you would want to build an agent with Forge is the ability to augment the agent with logic in a Forge app. Forge app is our apps you build with code, and you can apply programming logic. You can be very specific and not necessarily just rely on the LLM magic to do its thing. You can actually direct it more with code. You can also connect to other external data sources. So I mentioned that Rovo works and is aware across the Atlassian cloud products, as well as some SaaS apps and other tools you might use. But let's say, for instance, I wanted to call an API externally, pull some structured data from someplace else. You can do that with Forge in a custom agent built with Forge. The benefit is that you can keep your prompt private. When I have built an agent for the UI, all of that is exposed in terms of how I trained it. The prompt engineering behind it is essentially public. If you build it as an app that's concealed, you're interested in distributing your agent on the Atlassian marketplace. I mentioned at the top of the presentation that there's like 20 out of the box and there's maybe 15 or another 20 that are on the marketplace. Well, those were built by partners. Some of those Rovo implementations are agents to enhance existing apps. And then I believe there's even some apps that are purely just Rovo agents you can find in the marketplace. This diagram illustrates the relationship between Forge agents and Rovo. Forge agents define the prompt and other aspects, such as the conversation starters, like regular agents, but they can also define actions that Rovo invokes, it runs during the processing of AI requests. So that's the code part. And these actions typically involve making an API call to manipulate or retrieve data that Atlassian Intelligence and Rovo can then operate on. So now I'd like to go into an overview of Forge. I'm going to quickly go over some key concepts around Forge, so you'll have some context. It's going to be helpful for those that are not familiar with Forge, and maybe a refresher for some of you. So Forge, what is it? It's Atlassian's serverless development platform for building and running secure, reliable, scalable apps that extend Atlassian cloud products. If you're a developer, Forge does a lot of heavy lifting for you, especially compared to past ways to build apps on top of Atlassian products. So what kind of things can you build with Forge? It's practically anything that you can dream up. There's probably like 1,100 apps on the marketplace built using Forge. The first type of app you can build is a UI-based app. If you wanted to extend Jira's or Confluence product UI, it's relatively easy to do that with Forge. If you want to add new sections to a Jira issue view, new pages, or add information to the issue view, this is what I refer to as a UI-based app, something that the user interacts with live within the product. If you have experience building scripts or maybe using automations, this is another capability of Forge. It's great for performing complex automations. So a Forge app can perform tasks in the background after being triggered by product events, like values changing on an issue or Confluence page. You can also schedule a Forge app to be executed on fixed time intervals. So it doesn't necessarily require user interaction real time, like through the UI. It can react to things that happen and operate completely in the background. With Forge, you can also build integrations. For example, a pipeline between Jira and an external product. Your Forge app can call APIs to an external system. You can also set up a Forge app to receive API calls from authorized outside systems. Great for building integrations, a common use case we find for our larger customers that have built their own custom apps. A lot of them are actually integrations. And if you're an admin, you know a lot about workflows. With Forge, you can build workflow validators, custom validations, custom post functions and conditions. Very powerful, sometimes understated, but when it comes to demos around workflow validator functionality of Forge, usually admins are over the moon and are thinking about all the cool things that they can build. And you can also build Rovo agents. So who uses Forge? Developers use Forge, but we're also seeing an increasing number of admins and power users that are building apps for their organizations or for their teams. Even end users to improve how they work within the product. We're starting to see a serious uptick there, just because I think that it has a lot to do with the ease of building a Forge app and guidance on developer.atlassian.com. Partners, both solution partners and marketplace partners, are huge users of Forge. Most importantly, employees. Like Atlassians use Forge a lot internally. It really is something that we have adopted internally. And that really, again, it bodes well for the future roadmap of Forge. If you've been following Forge for a while, you know that the amount of investment and momentum put behind Forge is pretty significant. So in addition to being able to build for Jira and Confluence, you can build for Bitbucket, JSM, Compass, and obviously Rovo, which we're talking about today. I know that some of you are probably familiar with the marketplace, but at marketplace.atlassian.com, you're going to find great examples of things that you can build with Forge, all types of apps, from UI-based apps to automations. You may not even know that we have a marketplace, but there's about 6,000 apps in there, and lifetime sales of apps on the Atlassian marketplace has exceeded $4 billion. So it is quite an important part of our ecosystem. Before I jump into the command line and start building a Rovo agent, let's cover some key concepts. The first is the Forge CLI, the command line interface, and it's a tool that you'll need to work with Forge apps. You're going to use the CLI to do things like create new apps, deploy them to the cloud, and install them on your product instance. If you've already installed the Forge CLI, then you know that it only takes a few minutes to do it. As we go through the session, you're going to see me interact with the command line with the Forge CLI, and you'll see the commands and what they do. So what's needed? For the majority of you that have not messed around with Forge, to build a Forge app, or in our case, a custom Rovo agent with Forge, with your Atlassian account, create your own personal free developer sandbox instance. The free instance gives you a fully functional suite of the cloud products, including Jira, JSM, Confluence. There's some user limits on it, like 5 users for most products, 1 JSM agent, etc. but it's your own personal sandbox instance in which you're an admin, can invite other users. It's great to have the keys to the kingdom and be confident that you're not going to mess up any of your company's Jira projects or Confluence spaces. Some of you probably do have admin access, no matter the size of your company, small, medium, or gosh forbid, you're an admin at an enterprise company. Yet I highly discourage building and testing apps on your production instance. Just grab yourself a sandbox since it's free. Next thing you'll need to do is install Node.js. You do this on your local computer. Sometimes I call it your development environment. It's just your computer. Node.js is a free open source JavaScript runtime environment. We build apps using JavaScript or Node.js. And once you have Node.js installed, you're going to use this command npm to install the Forge CLI. It just takes a couple of minutes. Step-by-step instructions are documented. 15 minutes tops. And though not required, highly recommended. If you're a developer, you probably use a nice code editor. So I use Visual Studio Code. It's free. It makes it a lot easier to read the code and the syntax. It does nice highlighting, even highlight errors or syntax errors that it catches. One of the most popular extensions that are available now are AI-powered coding assistants. So when I hop into the editor, you'll see that it's just going to start maybe suggesting some code for me as I'm typing. And yeah, it's not kitschy. Like it's great. Particularly if you're a beginner building basic apps, which we're doing today, it can help you get to Hello World faster. I'm using Visual Studio Code in my demos. So just to zoom in real quick, get your own free developer instance. It gives you your own personal private sandbox to build and test your apps. Log in with your ID. Give a unique host name for your dev instance. This is the URL that you're going to use to not just access your dev instance, but to install a Forge app within it. The next thing you'll need, Node.js and the Forge CLI. Visit go.atlassian.com/forge-1. Really, it's just a short link to bring you to developer.atlassian.com. Once you have Node.js installed, just follow the instructions on the page. In literally minutes, you'll have the Forge CLI installed and instructions on how to create an Atlassian API token, log into the Forge CLI. Once done, you're ready to start building. I'm going to provide some links at the end. So I'm going to do a live demo of building a very simple agent from scratch with Forge in 3 steps. First, hop into the command line, type in Forge create. It's going to ask us a few questions like the name of our app, the category of what we're building for, the product we're building for, etc. It's going to download a template to my laptop and place it in a new folder, essentially a scaffold or a skeleton of a functional app. Once that app is on my machine, the next thing I'm going to do is deploy it to the cloud. This would be equivalent to, hey, I built an app and I want to run it in the cloud. You might put it on AWS, on an EC2 instance, or maybe on Heroku, etc. This is the equivalent of that. You're kind of like putting it online and it is ready to be run. Not quite installed on your test instance yet, because the third thing we're going to do is just run this command Forge install. So again, Forge create, Forge deploy, now Forge install. And this is going to prompt us for the name of our instance, which would be our test instance, our personal one. And then it's really just that easy to actually like create an app from scratch, deploy it to the cloud, install it. So I'm going to hop into a live demo right now. Let me make this bigger and do Forge create. Name our app, we'll call it Hello Cologne. I'm going to choose Rovo using my up and down keys here. Choose Rovo agent and action. We're going to go for a Rovo agent. It's downloading a template of an app. It's registering the app. I used the Forge login command earlier. I logged in as my developer persona, Beyonce, created this app and it says, hey, go into this folder and check out the app. So let's go inside the folder. It looks like that. I'm going to open this in my code editor and let's take a look at what's in here. So we have this file called a manifest. Every Forge app needs one. And these are essentially the parameters and settings for this Rovo agent. Here's the name of the agent, and this is the prompt. So these are essentially the same things that we were filling out when we created our agent through the UI. It came up with a prompt. You are a simple agent that helps Forge developers build their first Rovo agent. I'm going to say, change this. You are a simple agent that knows everything about the state of California. You can create Forge logs. Everything the user talks about, you will instead talk about California, almost annoyingly. Okay, so that's the prompt. Conversation starters. Let's add one. Tell me why I should live in California. This agent does very little. It has one action. It can send something to a log. If you're a developer, you want to log things in the background. But generally what we're doing here is just kind of defining the agent and its behaviors. Let's not go any deeper than that. I'm going to save this. I'm going to do the next command, which was forge deploy. Again, this is now linting, doing syntax checking. What's going to package my entire app and upload it to the Atlassian cloud. And at this stage, it's ready to be deployed on any instance for which the onsite my developer user has admin access. This is what I call sometimes side loading an app. The equivalent to this would be going to the marketplace and installing an app, but I'm going to use the command forge install. Let me get my test instance name. I'm going to install Confluence there, and yes. There's no special permissions in this. Like if I were to had said, hey, I want to pull data from an external data source, it would have told me like, hey, by the way, are you sure you want this Rovo agent to be able to pull data from here? But there's nothing in my manifest that has to do with it with any permissions. Okay. So now it says it is installed. Let's head over to the instance and find our agent. So I'm going to reload this. Open up Rovo chat and agents. I'm going to search for clone. Where are you? Probably the bottom somewhere. Oh, there it is. I'm going to put a star there. So an agent for testing Forge agent functionality. So here it is. Tell me why I should live in California. Those were the conversation starters. It's a very pro-California agent. I'm thinking about moving west. What about Portland, Oregon? So remember, my prompt was, Portland, Oregon is great. But let me tell you why California might be a better choice. Obviously, it's being annoyingly pro-California because that's what we had defined in our manifest here, right? At the very top. This is the prompt. This is essentially programming our agent with natural language. There's also an action in here, which I won't maybe get into, but like it can actually log an action, which we can log some text that we can actually pull from our app logs later. But in the remaining couple minutes here, I'm going to head over to developer.atlassian.com. If you go to example apps in Rovo, there's a few here. We have more in our back pocket. We just haven't published them yet because we're trying to polish them up. But here's an app, a Rovo agent, an issue analyst. It'll analyze issues in the queues. We have another one, a question and answer creator that's more Confluence driven. And then we have this other Confluence one called the weather forecaster. I like this one in particular. I think I would start with this one because it's a very simple one. And they're all open source. When you go to that link, you'll see this would be the equivalent of like, say, doing a Forge create. You just have to download it. And instead of Forge create, you just use this command forge register. And it essentially will be like a brand new app, but with code that someone else wrote. Inside the manifest is a more detailed prompt. There it is, helpful assistant, forecasts the weather, what data to display, formatting tips. So very deep amount of detail in the prompt. Here are some of the conversation starters. But we also have these actions here, geocode and forecast. And what those do, I have this in my editor. What these do is they're tied to code. Here are the actions, forecast and geocode. And these actions are mapped to specific code here. So we have forecast.js and geocode.js. So geocode will actually make an API call out to an external API, which, by the way, is allowed because in our manifest, the very bottom of these permissions, we're telling our Forge app or our Rovo agent here that you have permissions to access an external source to fetch information from this hostname. And when I installed this app, it actually said, hey, by the way, are you sure you want to permit this app to access this external API? In which we said yes. And inside this code are the API calls to get, first, this one will geocode. So, you know, if you pass it a city name and a country, it'll come back with a lat long. And then the other action is to actually make an API call to make a weather forecast. Let's forecast the weather in Cologne. So again, having this conversation with it here, I mentioned that you can interact with Rovo on the side chat bar, but you can also inside the editor. But anyway, check this out. So I'm going to expand this a bit and look what it came up with. I said forecast and it created this table. Well, let's say I wanted this in Fahrenheit. Can you get this in F instead? C? It's actually telling you with the code that it's running, the geocode and forecast, and now returns it in Fahrenheit. Give me the weather forecast for Sydney, Australia. You can do it on the side. You can do it inline. I think one of the upsides here is that you'll see how easy it is to insert this into a Confluence page. From my conversation, I just hit insert and it's here. And what you're going to love is that when you look into the code itself, it was not programmed to handle like, hey, I want to do this in Fahrenheit. You can leverage the power of the large language model training in natural language conversation, combine that with the code to unlock possibilities you didn't know existed. It's a very new programming paradigm, I would say. I hate to use that word, but it really is. And you only can really figure it out by messing around with it. If you go to the example apps, if you're like, wow, this Rovo thing's cool, start with the weather forecaster, maybe jump to this Jira issue analyst, populate your dev instance with some projects and some issues to see the Jira issue analyst work. It's nice to be able to kind of work backwards from the code. Like, again, these are all open source. There's step-by-step instructions for every one of these on how to use it, right? So you download the repo. Instead of Forge create, we use Forge register and then deploy and install. Bingo, it's done. It's a lot of fun. We did that. This is where you'll go. If you haven't been a developer at Atlassian.com, highly recommend you go there. It can be overwhelming. There's a lot of information there, but follow the guides, the learn section, and the sample apps. You'll be pleasantly surprised how easy it is to get started without having to start from scratch, from 0 lines of code. Forge Create will actually, again, scaffold a very basic app for you, but the sample apps go deeper. Next steps, get your sandbox. Install Node and Forge CLI. It should take a few minutes. Explore the docs. We have Forge Quest, an interactive, fun way to learn how to build apps with Forge. We're continuing to improve. We have a community for developers at community.developer.atlassian.com. Please go there if you have any questions at all. There's a lot of people there that are really excited to help whenever they can. So thanks so much. Please check out other Rovo-focused ACE events. You can go to the ACE website or click on this link. If you are going to be a team, we have a couple spots left for developer training on the morning and afternoon of April 8th. So we'd love to see you there too. There's a Getting Started with Forge 3.5-hour workshop and an intermediate Forge development, which is also 3.5 hours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Neil. The chat has been very busy. I pre-selected questions right from the audience. So while you were doing the Rovo intro, there was the question, what's source and latest data of the model? Can you ask who's German chancellor? Or better, who's becoming the next German chancellor, as we're quite about to have a change?
So I think the details about what language, I don't think it's any secret that we have an enterprise agreement with OpenAI, but I think that there's also things that we develop in-house as well. Don't have those details handy to the exact model. In terms of retrieval augmented, honestly, just try it for yourself. Try it for yourself and see what the capabilities and limits are, because it's free. When you have your dev instance, if Rovo is not in there by default, add the product. It's a 30-day free trial. So yeah, if you wanted to test its capabilities because you don't have access to Rovo today, get your dev instance, add it, and you can play with it.
Second question was, can no-code agents use external user-defined data sources? You did explain this during your other presentation. It's only related to code, right?
That's right. As of today, you would be limited to, like, you just couldn't pick any, for a no-code agent, any arbitrary external source. But honestly, if you reliably and easily fetch data externally, you'd do it building a Forge-powered Rovo agent.
The next question, you mentioned AI-powered apps in the Atlassian marketplace. Could you show us there need to be advanced filters applied, right?
So heading back to Marketplace, these are like featured collections. So it's not quite in the category section explicitly, but if you click on this, there's 53 in here right now. Truth be told, there probably could be other ones that have AI capabilities, but ones in which are definitely like the crux or the main value proposition is AI power. You can find it by just clicking on that AI powered apps, the featured section at the very front of Atlassian Marketplace.
What's the difference between installing it in Jira versus Confluence?
Right now, apps are pinned to a specific product within your instance. Going forward, it'll be more cross-product. You'll choose a product to install your app on, and it'll have access to other products within that instance. But for installing and updating is essentially the one that's paired against the one that you installed it to. So to your question about agents, I installed that one on Confluence, but let's hop in here and let's go to my agents favorites. Let's see how they show up. So no, it would not show up as an agent within Jira, only within Confluence. I think this will be addressed with a new Forge update, but to be addressed in the future, truly cross-product.
Can we say Rovo is the ChatGPT version of Atlassian?
I mean, if that's how you want to phrase it, it is a large language model. It utilizes that on the back end, and that's been trained by a very large training set. But I think that the specific product/customer data context is really, really important here, because that is not something you get out of the box. When Rovo came online on our internal instance, it wasn't as if I had to train it on anything. It just knew and was able to retrieve data that was contextual to the work that I'm doing at the company. It's a huge difference. Now, mind you, I realize that some of the public LLMs have the ability to do SaaS integrations, but when you have a team within Atlassian that is really hell-bent on their focus of making the product very useful in Jira or Confluence or Bitbucket work context, it doesn't feel like a patchwork. It's really integrated. Yes, you can have a conversation with it just like you would like ChatGPT. And in fact, I think that even by default, like my browser has, when I open up a new tab, it's a Rovo chat like interface now is like the default thing that comes up on our work browsers. It's a combination. It's search and it's an LLM as well.
Can we use Rovo with a remote backend like Spring Boot?
You can build an agent with Forge or the no-code version within the product. If your question is whether you can do this using Atlassian Connect Express like ACE, no. That being said, if you do have your own web service, you could access it. It would just be another external service that could be accessed. So you can fetch data from any other external app that you might have built and stood up someplace else.
The last are two security and privacy questions from the same person. How about data security and privacy using Rovo agent? And will there be any chance of data theft or data deletion with these agent? How to protect the site data?
For everything, let me just open up my other browser here. And maybe you are aware, but there's an entire security practice, a trust portal that we have that talks about our security practices. I think that you're asking, look, I'll just cherry pick one of the things you were talking about. Could the agent just inadvertently delete data? No. If you were to programmatically have your agent have an action that explicitly said, hey, update this page or update this issue, just like any other app, it would be able to do that, right? If you instruct it to do that and give it the permissions to do that. So if you go to developer.atlassian.com and you're building the Forge app for Jira or Rovo, you have to give it permissions. You would say, I want my app to be able to update issues, to be able to read only, to delete, etc. Those have to be explicitly granted by you, the developer, as well as by the admin that installs it, so that they know what the scopes and the capabilities are of this app. Out of the box, no, it can't do anything destructive unless, of course, that's, again, it's a program. So it could update things if you program it to do that. In terms of data leakage, I would say definitely go to the Trust portal and read more about that. But if a Forge app does not have any external permissions defined, data cannot egress. It can't pull data out. It can't make any external API calls out. So it truly runs within the Atlassian cloud. So that app that you built, then we did the Forge deploy, and every invocation of that app runs and stays contained within the Atlassian cloud. In order to either send data out or pull data in, that has to be explicitly defined in the manifest. If that's not there, the data would not be leaking out of your app to any external source.
Thanks, Neil. So all questions in the chat have been answered. Any last words? How to check when they have follow-up questions once they're starting to test Rovo and get into Forge?
Honestly, if you have any questions at all, I highly recommend you go to community.developer.atlassian.com. This is like the Atlassian Developer Community Forums. We also have our own Atlassian Developers YouTube channel. And on that, not only will you find updates of the latest things that we have shipped on Forge, because there's lots of changes and new things that are being developed on Forge all the time, you'll also find things like really in-depth tutorials and even some workshops, like some content that is hours long, if you're so inclined, across all kinds of different topics. So check out the Atlassian Developers YouTube. And for those just embarking, it can feel daunting because there's so much information. Almost anything you can do in the product, you can do with an API, like the Jira, Confluence REST APIs. I recommend you go to the Forge section and look at the getting started things. You can subscribe to these change logs. We have an RSS feed. If you want to stay abreast of everything that's happening, new things are launching, and staying on top of that, particularly if you have an app running in production, check out the change log. You can even put this RSS feed in your Slack and be updated every time something is announced.
Great learning session. Thanks everyone for being here today. Have a fun day or evening wherever you're coming from, and see you on the next session.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.